Wondrous Works. My name is Josh, the lead pastor of Cornerstone Church Wirral. In the build-up to Cornerstone Wirral celebrating its 10th year since it was planted, we're recounting the story through these podcast episodes, and we're really grateful for you here tuning in, listening and watching. Today I'm joined by Steve Robinson and Paul Elms, pastors of Cornerstone Church Liverpool, who were the sending church of us when we were sent out to plant. Now, thus far, we've heard the story of myself and Annie, and we've heard some of the stories of those who became in that small team to plant, but we want to hear from your perspective what it was like being part of training and sending us out. What it was like being part of your first church plant as a church as well, and share some stories, hopefully to encourage and ultimately to declare the wondrous works of the Lord and all that he has done. So welcome.
It's good to be here.
Good to be here.
So Paul, this is your podcast debut in your life.
Indeed.
What a great time and place to do it.
Thank you for including me.
Steve's here because he's a dab-handed podcast hosting, so he's just basically critiquing me.
You did all right. You did okay.
So far, 1 minute in.
That's right. 1 minute in, you're doing well.
So let's start with a backstory. So obviously people have heard my story of where Annie and I were at moving to the Wirral and then conversations. But prior to that, God was doing a wondrous work through you guys, starting further back. So why don't you share a little bit about what God was doing in and through both your lives and then through the church at Ramleys Road?
Yeah, no problem. I guess our story in terms of church planting and sending people that you guys have been connected into and gone from began probably in the mid-noughties, listening to different things online, God doing a work through times that I was spending in different parts of the world for the charity that I worked for, engaging with young people who were planting churches in their city. And God did a great work to capture my heart for Liverpool and to be convinced by church planting. So long story short, that was what was the plan, that we were actually going to plant a church. But God's idea was that he wanted Sean and I with a team of people to go and replant an existing church that was struggling, which was Ramleys Road Chapel, just off Penny Lane there. And through a number of different things, we ended up going there. Paul and Bonnie were part of that with a few other people. Some of those people are still with us. Some of them have moved on to different things. Praise the Lord for that. And what I think is wonderful about our story, your story, all the stories that have come up from that the first meeting that I had with Roy Hughes and Alan Taylor and Ron Martin and John Lockyer in Roy's house, and they were the elders of Ramleys Road. When I was asked, Steve, what would you do if you came here as the pastor? I had no grid for replanting a church. But my thoughts were, what would it look like for us to be a church that plants churches? So my conviction was that we want to be a gospel-centered church that disciples people and specifically invests in men in order for them to be sent to plant churches because of our conviction, the elder-led churches. And they, I think, as much as it excited them, there was an element that the conversation was pie in the sky. So there was a sense that it was like, that sounds great, that's wonderful, but we're in this situation. So I think what's been great and what's wonderful now, 10 years on from planting you, is that those prayers that were prayed in that room, because they were prayed as much as it felt pie in the sky, they were prayed that, okay, Lord, you're a sovereign over all things. You can do this. You can bring life from the ashes of what appeared to be a dying church. And God in his kindness did something in those contexts that led to us meeting you, that led to obviously everything that has occurred since. So I think it's what's wonderful is that it's not only new life in Ramleys Road Chapel, that life has come from the faithfulness of those people in terms of the decision that they made to ask myself and the team and that was a big risk for them. Of course it was. It was a big risk. It was a brethren church. They'd never had a pastor before. To invite somebody that they didn't really know. They just heard of a little bit, but they didn't know, and a gang of younger people that they didn't know, and just God's kindness for us to form a family very quickly, and that what came from that was a blessing. And that was my story in the context that whilst that was all happening, Paul and I were leading a small group for young adults at Bridge Chapel, which blew up really in the right sense, didn't it? We had, and lots of those then young people, now middle-aged people, That's scary, isn't it? Lots of them are in ministry, which is a real blessing. So obviously our story, God was doing something to prepare us there. And I don't even think we realized that was the case before it stepped into what we've now done through Ramley's, Cornerstone, and obviously the collective from that point.
So Paul, as you came with that team and instrumental in kind of replanting that and galvanizing, what was it like in those early years of replanting a church? What were some of the challenges and joys that you were experiencing?
Yeah, it was a bit of a, so for me, it's been a whirlwind all along. So being part of the team that came, I'd only been a Christian, 4 years at that point.
Yeah, I think so.
Really early. So I came as an elder on the team. So the whole thing was kind of almost like you were joining the dots as you went along. So I was seeing things kind of lived out as I was kind of part of them, just going, oh, okay, that's what this looks like, or that's what this is. So that was exciting. It was just being part of that, the whirlwind in a sense, is you kind of, we're moving on to this. We replanted the church and we're kind of moving into the areas and building friendships, building kind of like a church as we go along, and things were kind of, it grew really quickly in those early days, really quickly. And then just kind of having this vision for reaching Merseyside and effectively reaching Liverpool, wasn't it, in a way? Reaching Liverpool with the gospel. And then just seeing that kind of played out in front of us as being still a whirlwind, I'll be honest with you, just being wonderful. It's a challenge, obviously, as being part of a small team coming to replant a church. There are many, many challenges, but so many joys, just seeing people grab the gospel, seeing people loving kind of being part of the community, seeing kind of ladies in the church who were kind of just loving having loads of kids around, loving being in people's houses, loving just kind of all these older ladies who'd not seen that before were like, this is boss, just really, really enjoying it. Seeing old men who were kind of just talking shit about never stop growing in Christ. It was just it was a wonderful time of growth for us. But it was a bit of a whirlwind, but a lovely whirlwind, I would say.
Yeah. Now there's one particular story, isn't there, that always stands out when we recount those early years, even before I arrived. It was one of Vlad, wasn't it? Do you want to share about that story? I think it'd be great to share.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, even as Paul was talking then, that my vision, our vision was to reach Liverpool. And I had real hard to reach Scouse people with the gospel, which I think is a good vision to have. I want to see my people, our people, one for the Lord Jesus. But I think the Lord graciously showed me that my vision, our vision, was not big enough. That he had a bigger vision, that his vision is for the glory of the Lord to cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. So we'd been meeting for a couple of months. We were growing a little bit, but it wasn't with non-Christians. It was just like people just sort of arriving, or people just checking out the church. And there was just this real conviction that we needed to pray for people to be saved, which is really interesting, bearing in mind we'd only been going for a few months. But very quickly, especially in a replanting situation, you can get involved in the change, or get involved in what needs to be fixed, or get involved in building the relationships of where you're at. And it's not that it's not that we forgot that we were about reaching people with the gospel. I just think we just got caught up. And I'd been at a conference, I can't remember if you were with us, down in London. Terry Virgo had been doing some stuff about prayer, and it was just a real conviction. And on the way back, I just thought we need to pray more. So I met with the elders on the Sunday morning, used to meet before the service, and just said, look, this week, could we have a week of prayer? We'll meet at 6:30 in the morning, 6:30 in the evening. Just encourage people to gather. And whilst I was sharing that with the elders, Alan Taylor, Mr. T, was on the door, and he came in and just said, look, there's a young man that's just arrived. His name's Vlad. I've had a brief conversation with him. He's never been to church before. He's a Romanian guy who lives around the corner. Great. Anyway, we went out. We did the service. I remember seeing Vlad and know exactly where he was sitting and who he was sitting next to. I shared that we were going to meet that week to pray. And then I think Vlad just left at the end of the service. I never got to speak to him. Following morning, we met, and it's interesting. It was Monday morning, 6:30. I think 17 of us turned up to pray. Now, this is not a criticism of the younger team in any way, but the reality was the majority of people that were in the room were the older folks who were getting up out of bed. And I appreciate those of us who were younger, had young kids and everything that came with that. But we sat in the circle, and Ramley's Road, for those that don't know, Ramley's Road Chapel was a tiny little church and church building. And where we were sitting, where I was sitting, was like my back was the wall which everybody would look to, and then I could see the doors. And so we were in a circle, and I went around the room and I just asked, look, we want to pray for lost people. Give us a name, give us a name or a context of somebody that would want to hear the gospel or share the gospel with. So we went around the room, and then I got to Pat and Joan. So Pat and Joan, the two ladies in our church, and it was Vlad that was sitting next to them. They both said, could we pray for the young man, Vlad? Explain, Romanian guy, never been to church before. Of course we can. So we went around the room, we prayed. Finished the prayer meeting, and we decided to meet the next day, which was the Tuesday. Again, sitting in a circle, I'm sitting in the same spot. I could see the doors. I went round the room and I just said, who do you want to pray for? People named names. Pat and Joan said Vlad again. We started praying. 10 minutes into the prayer meeting, the doors open. Who walks through? Vlad. He walks through. So it was hilarious. We're all sitting there in this circle, and you could just see people go like, wow, God does answer prayer with a yes. You know what I mean? He literally walked in and sat next to Pat and Joan, and they were like, and you could just see people, everyone was like, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this is happening. Now, being an ex-policeman, my thoughts were very different. My thoughts were, Romanian guy, never been to church before, walks into a prayer meeting at 6:30 in the morning. I'm thinking, why is he here? So I'm like looking at him and then looking at all the ladies' bags thinking, if he grabs one of these bags, he's going out that window. Seriously, I've confessed this to him since. But literally that was going through my mind. And like, that saddens me, the fact that that was the case, but that was the reality. And at the end of the time of prayer, Vlad came over to me and he said, look, can I talk to you? I've been looking for somebody to talk to for a long, long time. And then he said, I came here on Sunday and you were preaching, and I was thinking, I've got to talk to this guy. I've got to talk to him. And he told my story that he ended up coming to Liverpool. He was previously in Chester. He came to Liverpool. It was during the time when Romanian people could be in the UK, but they couldn't work. But he ended up getting a job, cash in hand at the time, working for a lady who was doing a bit of property developing. He ended up in Stockport. And whilst in Stockport, his job was to empty out an old people's home. And during the day, just empty it out because it was going to be renovated. And then during the night, he was security. So he had a bit of a job, somewhere to stay and, could do it. But he said after a couple of nights, he just got bored. So he went to look for something to read. And the first book he came across was a Good News Bible. And he said, I just began to read it and I got hooked. Mm. And I just read it and I just kept reading it. And I got to the part where it talks about the tabernacle. And he said to me, I want to be an architect. So I was trying to figure out what it would look like and putting all the things together. And then I continued reading it. And then when I got to the point about Jesus, I was thinking, who is this person? Only a God can say these things. Only a God can do these things. And I continue reading it. And and he said this, and I quote, I got to Paul's letters. And I'm thinking, who have you been speaking to? There's just the way he was articulating what he had been reading. He must have been speaking to someone. I said, who have you been speaking to? I haven't been speaking to anyone. He said, when I got to Paul's letters, Jesus and his death on the cross and the resurrection made sense. And then everything else that I read in the Bible made sense as well. And I'm like, wow. Like, amazing. Wow. And everyone was sitting around because suddenly everybody needed to stay. And they're all like earwigging in and listening. I was able to chat with him, had a really good conversation, and pray with him there and then. And, I believe he'd already become a Christian. He just needed somebody to help him articulate and draw the dots together. And he ended up in our house that night. In fact, my parents' house that night, a Robbo Tuesday event, and I just enjoyed time there. And it was just amazing to see what God had done. And Vlad then just spent time with us. And he moved in with Mr. T, and Bridget was there for a couple of years. And effectively for 3 years, we hung out with him every day. He became an Indian. Brilliant mind, got amazing stuff. And, now by God's grace, he's the pastor of a Dulam church in Timisoara, which he was able to plant, and doing a great work there in Romania. Really, really good work in that context. So just like even from day one, the first person that gets saved is somebody that we were able to disciple. And now there's a church that's been planted off the back of that. And that
outside the Merseyside as well.
Outside the Merseyside, that makes the vision so much bigger.
Yeah, or Liverpool, outside of Liverpool.
Outside of Liverpool, yeah, Liverpool, Merseyside. Yeah. And I never thought for a minute that we'd be talking about training and sending somebody to Romania. Never mind the Wirral. More chance for Romania than the Wirral, to be honest with you. But it's a great story. Yeah. It's a great, great story. A privilege to be to have a seat to see what God's done in his life. I miss him.
And it must have been amazing just as like elders and congregations start seeing God answer those prayers. That, that vision that felt unrealistic in some senses in the human standards, but to start to see that happening, and the people must have been so excited to see you guys grow in that.
He was, and he was just straight away part of the church anyway. So that just showed from day one, didn't it? He stepped in, he served, became an intern, he did a course, didn't he? The Northwest Partnership course, theology course. He actually then started doing some preaching as well for us, which was amazing. No second language preaching. And then just, he came out and said, I feel like I need to go back to Romania. It was like one of those moments when it was gutting, wasn't it? But also so exciting. You're like, wow, Lord, what are you doing? This is incredible. Yeah.
I remember sitting around when he came up to the office, didn't he? He shared that, and we were all just like, what?
Yeah. You going back.
you gotta go.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reality of church planting. The reality of Christian ministry. We're about seeing the gospel go to the four corners of the earth. We're about that. And if we are about that, we've got to expect that God's going to even use a little backstreet church in Liverpool with a gang of people that are trying to figure out as they go to do that. And as much as we are family and we want to foster family and we want to engage and be familial in our interactions, because the Bible says we are, and there's something as other people look in, says there's something about that. We've also got to recognize that God is calling and using people for his purposes and his glory outside of what we are doing. So that's the joy of that we get to be part of that. But it's also, there's a little bit of pain in that because we say goodbye. We say goodbye. And I remember that, I'll never forget that day. The one side of the coin was like, this is amazing. The other side, I was heartbroken. Because I knew that was the end of something, but the beginning of something else, which has been amazing and beautiful and everything that comes with that. It's interesting when you think about church planting. I remember when we were sending out Hope Church, Kensington, and my kids were saying to me, oh, who's going? And I named a couple of people. I won't say which ones because I don't want to offend anyone. It was all of them. It was all of them. But I named a few people. And I remember Ella saying, she's like, Dad, why is so-and-so going? Oh, please just do us a favor. Will you stop planting churches?
That's what the gospel does as well, isn't it? There's this kind of inversion of, so the culture says, why are you moving? Why are you moving there? And it's the same with Vlad, because all like the economically active men, his age from Romania, were coming over and he was saying that. Yeah. It's like people he's spoken to couldn't make sense. They're like, hang on, you're there, you're where we want to get to.
That's right.
But he's going back. He's actually going back to Romania with the gospel. The opposite of what all the people his age are doing.
And also the opposite to what he said he was going to do. Yeah. He said, when I left Romania, I was never going back. Yeah. And that, the gospel just turns it upside down. It's like, actually, you're going to go there. Yeah. You're going to meet me. And then you're going back to proclaim that. So it's a joy, isn't it, to be part of that. But also there's a good, righteous, I don't know what the right word is, because it is painful. It's like giving birth, I guess. Not that I know what giving birth is like. Before anyone writes in and complains, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? You don't know. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I do not know. But what I do know is that there's pain and then there's instant joy.
It happens every time we send either a person or every time we send a group of people. You feel a sense of excitement and joy tinged with that kind of. There's a little tinge down there, isn't there? Oh, we're going to miss these guys.
Yeah.
And not just you'll miss them, you'll miss their gifting, you'll miss who they are, you miss the families, you'll miss the service. You do miss them, but what a joy it is to see them go and just hear of what's going on through them in the years following.
That's right.
Never said that about me. Anyway, so
we haven't got that to you yet.
Can we talk about Man United? From you.
Thank goodness, get rid of it. So while God's doing all this incredible stuff at Ramsey's Road Chapel, I've moved to the Wirral and applied to do seminary with Portbrook, as was then. And that's where we met. Do you remember? Yeah. Do you remember when we met?
I do remember exactly the moment where we met.
Go on.
So you arrived late, which will not surprise people, but you arrived late and we were playing five-a-side, actually. We were playing a bit of five-a-side. I remember the door opening and I was bossing the five-a-side. I just genuinely, I was looking good on the five-a-side pitch.
It's not true.
It was true. You weren't there. It was quality. Honestly,
Standard was pretty bad there.
Standard was pretty bad. Anyway, I was bossing it, and I remember the door open, and James walked in, James Jaggard, and then you walked in, and I distinctively remember your big smile. You had a big smile, and it was like, wow, we're playing footy. You were like a little kid, like, yeah, we're playing footy. Anyway, you played on the other team, and I could tell straight away that you could play. And so I thought, I'll take it off him. And then you put the ball through my legs. I thought, right, that little fella's going to get it. And you never got it because I couldn't get anywhere near you. But I remember that. And then I think it was during that time, we were at Porterbrook. And what was great about those days with Porterbrook is that in the context of the room, everybody was thirsty to hear and to learn about what it looked like to plant churches. So most people in the room, if not all the people in the room at the time, were thinking, I want to be involved in church planting. I want to think about this. And we were learning from people who had experience and people who'd written some really good stuff. So I think there was a sense that, you know, if you're going to foster relationships, or if you're going to engage in something, you know, the Lord, there was, you know, you could see his kind providence in the fact that we were at that. Where were we? I can't even remember. Was it Harvey or something?
Yeah.
Harvey,
Leicestershire.
Terrible Christian conference centre, wasn't it? In that context, to be able to sitting around the table and talking about those things, I think it was through that. I remember actually being in the back of the car. You guys gave me a lift home because obviously you come to the Wirral, and we'd only just met. And I think I probably did the classic thing that I usually do, is I was just waxing lyrical in the back of the car, and you two were just like listening. And I think that's where it began from that point.
Yeah, I think like prior to that, moving up, you know, I had this ideas of this and hopes of this and aspirations of this, but it felt very far off, felt very young, naive. Not much has changed, but just, yeah, like needing context to grow in that.
Yeah.
And experiencing that. And I think we found it hard in the world to find context where we could be trained, equipped to do that. And so having met you and then hearing about the story, it was like, that feels like something to be part of. And then obviously you were part of Acts 29. That was something I wanted to be part of. And then it kind of made sense to kind of carry those conversations on. What was it like when he came back and he was, you might plant a church on Wirral?
Yeah, it's interesting because we'd have a heart for Liverpool. But I'm a woolly back anyway, so you know, I'm from St.
More in common, yeah.
You know what I mean? More in common, yeah. But yeah, it was one of those moments of thinking through, okay, this is happening in a way. And again, I said, you know, for me, it was a whirlwind, the whole thing of just kind of joining the dots as we go through. So we talked about church planting, but actually not having seen it other than doing it ourselves in the revitalization kind of place was interesting, just to then start to think through what might this look like. But it was very, it seemed from my recollection, it was very just organic, wasn't it? It was very relational, very organic, very informal, very just kind of low key, just let's be a part of what we do. Let's just kind of grow together, see what happens together, kind of search, see what God says. Let's hear from God together. Let's kind of walk this together. That's what it seemed to. There was nothing. It wasn't like razzle and dazzle. It was very much kind of just very informal, relational. Let's see what God does.
It was, yeah. Spent a lot of time in that tunnel for me, driving backward and
That's
forward.
Right. Yeah, that's right. But I also think there was a sense, and this is something that we've got to get back. We've got to get back. There was a sense of this, okay, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
We've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, God had raised the dead. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to the church. It was going to close. We were burying more than we were baptizing. If we don't do something, we're going to, it's, last one alive, turn the lights off. And genuinely, that was the language that was being used. And we'd seen God raise the dead. So if we can see him raise the dead, of course he can bring new life. So there was
the elders we had with us, 4 of them were from the original church. It was me, you and Eddie, wasn't there? So they'd seen that and witnessed it. They were behind it. We were all behind it. There was an element of it was just okay, let's do this and see what happens.
And then we'll just figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
And there was something that we're trusting, and there's something about growing and maturity and development and structures and experience that I think sometimes, if you're not careful, robs you of that. Robs you of that sense of risk, robs you of that sense of let's give it a go. Because I think we highlight the mistakes, I guess. Not that you were a mistake in any way, but we highlight the mistakes, or we highlight the things that could have been better, or we highlight those things and then forget the amazing things that actually happened. Yeah. And there's something about your experience and our experience together that I think we need to recapture again in terms of moving forward. And sometimes we overthink it. Now, hear me, I'm not saying it's, assessments aren't good and all that. They're all important things to do, but I think sometimes we formalize it, I guess, that we miss something. But there was something about those early days that let's give it a go. We've got nothing to lose. We've got no money, so let's crack on. You know what I mean? Let's figure it out, which, I'd love to see happening again in different ways. And I think that's the organic nature of what you said was.
There's a real closeness to it as well, wasn't it? There was a closeness in relationship, which was on one level hindered as such, but there was a big river between us in a sense, that kind of, but there was still that closeness. There was a real sense of, from our perspective, a deep care about what you guys were doing, a deep care about this and what was, we really cared what was happening there. We felt really involved, felt a real part of it, which is a blessing. It really was a blessing.
And then also there's the sense, you guys, we took a risk and you guys took a risk. I remember when you and Annie came to our house for the first time and just imagine the people who are listening, just imagine Josh 10 years ago or whatever, 12 years ago. And those who know me 12 years ago, there was just is it like an unbridled horse? Is that what it's like? Yeah, in the sense that it's just like the horse just wants to run. And I think me and you were just like waxing lyrical in the kitchen about what your future was going to be. And like Annie being like, what is going on? And Sean being very aware of Annie being, what's going on? And I just think that there was that sense of having. So I think what comes with that is the reality kicks in. At that point, it's different. When you're in a car driving back from a conference, you're getting all excited. And then when you sit in the reality of actually there's family involved here and there's finances and there's a sense of, as much as it was, let's give it a go, there was a responsibility of, you were only young. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we were only, we were young, but we were a lot older and had more behind us in one sense. So there was that as well, which I think is helps. It does help in the care. It's not, we're not going to cut you off. No, we got to walk this road.
Yeah. So Annie and I then officially moved to join you guys January 2012. And we just remember traveling over and just being part of what God was doing and just learning, observing, hanging out, spending a lot of time. Poor Annie would have to work a full day in Chester and then drive down the 56 across the Runcorn Bridge to come and join us. And I'd already spent the whole day in Liverpool and we were there the whole night. Yeah. Where we were babysitting for you guys or part of GC or whatever it was. It was just became normative for what we were doing. And through all of that context, God was shaping us, and like God did so much in my character and formation, but then also just opportunities to serve and be part of it. And we had a really kind gift from the guys in Nidri, from Mes McConnell in August of 2012, which allowed me to give a couple of days, not for a lot of money, but it just gave that sense of affirmation toward what you as a church were doing, what we were prayerfully pursuing. And I think in that September 2012, we started going a bit more public and about, we're going to plant a church, we're going to do this. And we started trying to gather a few people. They did a very good job, got three people joined. It was small, it was fragile. Some other people made some big risks.
You still gathered 3.
To start.
They were quality 3.
They were. Annie didn't have a choice either.
Golden.
What were some of your memories as you, I guess, not only like poured into me and Annie, but also led a church through that process of planting and moved toward the launch of that?
I think there was a sense that there was and I think there still is. There was so much trust. And I think that there was trust in primarily God, but also trust in the fact that the walking with you and sending you was something that God had clearly mapped out, and it was clearly calling us to do. So I think there was a lot of trust in the life of our church, and there still is in the context of Cornerstone Liverpool, very much so. And that's a really wonderful thing. And I think so leading the church was really easy, like in the right sense. It was easy. People were excited by this. They were excited about, and you guys had been with us for that time. Initially, there's that sense of, okay, Josh is going to be doing some bits and bobs with a view to doing this. And people sometimes don't even understand what that means. You know what I mean? They don't understand what that means, but they trust the process that this is going to be great. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And so I think there was a real sense of excitement. I think also a real sense of ownership for people. So I remember in the early days when you started meeting in the bridge, there are actually people used to come over, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Like the different gospel communities would come and encourage you because it was a Sunday afternoon. So because of that, people were just excited to be part of seeing that happen. Again, when you have been close to death and then you're given a new lease of life, you take risks and you step in and you're excited about the shoots of life that are occurring from that context. And I think that was really tangible for us, and tangible for the church. It also coincided with sending Vlad and Ronnie.
Yeah, on the same day.
On the same day. So we're sending them back to Romania. We're sending you back to the Wirral because you went part of a church on the Wirral at that time to make things happen. So it was really exciting. It's really, and I think people were really excited by that and what was happening.
The ownership, I think, was kind of key for me. So the people were really behind you. They were excited by it. Everyone in the church was excited by it. And I think because obviously 5, you can sense it wasn't a lot, was it? But they were quality, Lee and Jen, quality. Hannah, quality. She hadn't been, obviously just joined recently to when you guys were going to move, but you also had a real clarity yourself of what you were going to do and what you wanted to do. But as well, it was just an awareness at that point. So on one level, we hadn't planted, we hadn't sent a church, but there was just a real desire to this one. It wasn't like a line in the sand of off you go, see you later. It was okay, we're doing this with you. We want to help you, we want to walk this. Even to the, thinking through things like gospel communities, going over, just supporting what this might look like, what do you guys need, what's it look like from a team perspective, what about Sunday gatherings? All those things were part of the conversation. So it just felt like we were part of the process in doing it. So it wasn't like you guys are doing it. It felt like we were doing it with you and helping you along the way. And it wasn't just a cut off, but like it was a walk together for you guys doing this. That's what it felt like. That's my recollection of it. Yeah.
And we were so grateful for all that. We felt loved, cared for, and supplied and resourced to be able to go and do that. And it did feel like one big family doing that, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
And and that experience, hasn't it, like shaped us even to this day, hasn't it? Through everything we do in the collective and want to see happen across Merseyside.
Definitely.
It's been amazing. Yeah, and as we then planted in the September, and then you then had some stuff going on in your family you want to share, and then that kind of shaped again our experience those early years. You want to share a bit about that?
Well, I think again, even the situation that happened with us with Ella. So we found out that Ella had the tumor in the spinal cord in the November of 2013, and you guys had just been sent, and you were small, fragile, vulnerable. Paul was part-time. You were effectively part-time, and then that happened, and that took me out of things. And then we ended up going to America for the treatment. But again, in the context of that, you see God's hand of providence in and through that situation. I remember, like, this is just a personal story, for me, and I think it's been helpful. I've had to be reminded of these things because I've forgotten them. But I remember sitting next to her bed after the big operation that she had initially. And, I really realized at that moment that I was like helpless. So I'm like, there's nothing I can do for my daughter. There's nothing I can do for Sean, because Sean couldn't stay because she just had Joshua. He was days old. She couldn't stay in the hospital. So there's nothing I could do for Sean. And I couldn't do anything for the other two kids. I couldn't do anything for the church that I was leading, and we'd sent you guys out. There's nothing I could do there. There was just this real sense. It was an overwhelming sense of, I feel helpless, but I felt safe. Do you understand what I mean? And 3 things. God the Father is a better father to Ella than I could ever be. Jesus is a far greater husband to Sean than I could ever be, and he's a far greater shepherd to any church that I may have the privilege of sitting in leadership. And that was overwhelming. Now, I've forgotten that. I've had to be reminded of that. God's took me back there on several occasions, but I think there was a real kindness, even in the midst of that horrendous situation, that I didn't need to be there. God was going to do his thing, and he was going to do his thing through the fact I wasn't there, the fact that you're making it up, the fact that you're making it up. We're all trying to figure this out. We've got this going on. You've got to lead Cornerstone Liverpool. You've got to preach there and then preach Cornerstone Liverpool, then go to the Wirral for the bridge in. It was like a mess. If you wrote it down on paper, if we knew it was going to happen, there's no way we would have sent you. Of course. But God was like, no, this is going to happen. Yeah. This is going to happen because it's not about you. And it's not about your ability, and it's not about anything else. In the midst of probably the weakest part of your life and situation, for us all in some senses, in different things, I think within those year and within those couple of years, we'd all had like brutal situations and news and all this sort of stuff. In the midst of that weakness, I'm going to do my thing. Mm-hmm. And he did. Mm-hmm. So, and he does, it's not like he stopped doing those things. Mm-hmm. And I think that just in the midst of that weakness, his strength was so clear in that, and particularly for the church planting, it didn't fail. Wonderful news in the midst of it. Annie gets pregnant and has the baby as well, as Evie, you know what I mean? And that's a different challenge. And you have to be told that you're not allowed to preach, even though you thought you could, and then realize what it is to be a dad. And then all this sort of stuff, there's all this stuff going on. And I just think, God kindly did his thing in the midst of all that, which I'm thankful for on so many different levels. Painful. Change a lot of it tomorrow, of course you would. But I wouldn't change what he did in the midst of it.
Yeah, it was a painful time anyway. So me and myself and Bonnie just come off some painful stuff that I'd gone through myself in the backdrop, which was, and God uses these times, doesn't he? I remember we were sat in the car, myself and Bonnie, a couple of years before, and are we ready to go into ministry? We know it's going to get harder, and then actually we're like, yeah, no, we're going to do it. And then it did. There was 3 things that just made it, there was a lot of loss in different areas. And actually we walked that, and then obviously we planted the church, dead exciting. But then obviously Steve had to go to Oklahoma 3 months. And so we made the decision, didn't we? It was myself and you, just because of the part-time nature, the demands on the time, we decided that we were going to preach in the churches. So actually we'd take a turn apiece, preach the same thing, take a turn apiece. Which is actually a blessing, because we think it was that 2-week spell, 2-week turnaround. But I remember it was a great time as well, because we were bringing over musicians every week, weren't we? Richie Williams would come on the piano. It would be Andrew Wyatt would come and play the guitar. If none of them could be available, it was me as well. I remember I got me 3 chords out, GCD. That was horrendous. That was the worst music's ever been at Cornerstone Wirral. But it was a time of blessing as well, wasn't it? Because I'll be honest, in a way, it fitted where you were. It just made sense as well, because we were messing it. We were kind of not making it up as we went along. We were trying to figure it out as we go along. You're in the side room of this little kind of side room of a pub. Yeah. You've got like a bar in the backdrop. You've got a little pen area for the kids. You've got to remember, most Sundays you kind of, you're trying to start the service, but Josh is somewhere on the road trying to sweep up all kinds of people from Wirral to come in. And
he did that classic standing at the door, draw people in.
He didn't just stand at the door, he'd march up and down the road, kind of like looking for people. And then we'd start, that was it. They were good moments, they were kind of really formative times of both. Well, it was for me in my ministry as well. And it's just, I remember, because you had the kitchen there as well. Did you remember the kitchen? I remember pointing at the chef once, because I was telling about Jesus came back. I said, Jesus is going to come back. And then as I pointed, the chef came out the door and looked at me. And I'm like, that's not Jesus, just to clarify, guys. But it was really formative. It was a great time. It was, and it was shaping for you guys, I'm guessing, shaping for us as a church to go, let's, we mean this, we're doing it.
And also we can't not mention Anna Robinson. We need to mention her. It's brilliant. She'll be listening and she'll find it funny, because Anna and Steve arrived. So you said Steve Robinson's arrived. I'm like, hang on, there's only one Steve Robinson. Of which then he said, no, man, I'm Stephen Robinson. You get the full title. Anyway, they were there very early, weren't they? It was great.
Came, first or second and Sunday.
Was it just the one little one?
Catherine,
Catherine, yeah. And I just remember, and I think we both experienced preaching, and they were trying to keep her happy. And then she'd dance across the room at the back of the room, and then feed the little one, and then she'd be dancing around. Brilliant. There's just brilliant moments that's real. That's like real messy church plans, and they're there. They want to be committed. They're like, this is new, but we want to be at this, and we got a little one. She needs feeding at that time. It was 4 in the afternoon. Everyone gets that. And it was just, and honestly, when I think of preaching, I think of preaching proclaiming, and there's Anna dancing around the back.
Do you know what I think of?
It's just genius.
One of my funniest memories was it wasn't the bridge. It was what was the next place?
Lyceum.
The Lyceum.
In the Lyceum. And I'd got it because you were meeting at 4:00. It was exactly the time that Liverpool kicked off.
Yeah, Liverpool got good round there,
Liverpool
didn't
got
they?
good. And your room where you met was next to the big room, the social room where everyone watched the footy. So I started preaching as Liverpool, and all you could hear was like, yes. People were like swearing and shouting. It was like, we just had to persist through it, didn't we? That was an interesting moment. Yeah, that was a good moment.
And I think, we've all got stories of that from even Ramleys and different things. But I just, again, that's the, and we want to talk about this because we want to see more churches planted. Liverpool and the Wirral all over the place.
That's messy.
It's messy. And, we don't want to overthink it.
Yeah.
And there was a sense that it was like, we gave it a go. For the
So like, if we'd have known, we would have paused it, you're right.
Of course.
We would have. But actually, that wasn't in God's intentions and plans. He's like, no, this way.
Yeah, this is how it's going to happen, and this is what I'm going to do, and I think we want to, continue to think and do that again in the right sense. Reading through the book of Acts with my lads at the moment, there was nothing planned there, man. Mm-hmm. It became intentional in certain things. Of course it did. Paul, he had an idea where he was going to go and he's moving. But like at the beginning, the early days, man, they just did it. People got saved. They figured it out. Yeah. That's the mess we want, isn't it? Yeah. The healthy figuring out of what it looks like when God does a thing and people get saved and new people join the church and, you've got sickness, you've got all the realities of life happening. And sometimes I think we forget that God's bigger than all that. And God will do what he wants to do in the midst of that. And I think, we need to, one of the great things about story, and one of the great things about, our story together, and particularly your story, because that's what we're talking about as well, and the story of Cornerstone Wirral, is that I think stories are there to remind us of God's kindness in the midst of reality. And the reality being the brokenness of the world, but also the reality of his providence and his sovereignty and his goodness and his grace. And to remind us again all the time, don't forget what I did. Don't forget who you were. Don't forget what I've done. And don't forget that actually I will do it again and can do it again. Don't overthink it. We don't mature into an independency away from God and his goodness and his grace. We don't suddenly go, oh, that was all a mess. Now we figured it out. No, let's just carry on stepping in and let him do his thing. I didn't know we were going to talk about these things, but it's just a real wonderful reminder of what, God does with broken, messed up deadheads like us.
It says in Acts, God added to their number day by day. As they lived out being the church, in the mess of life, God added to their number day by day.
Yeah.
And I think what comes to mind is actually these experiences actually then have really shaped how we've done ministry, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And like how you guys have continued to plant churches, we've formed a collective, and even how we function in the midst of that and what we're still trying to fight for and discern and figure out. But actually it was those early years experiences have really shaped us in ministry, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've changed how we think stuff. They've humbled us at different times
Yeah.
and have grown us really in love for Jesus, but with continued desire to see Merseyside saturated with gospel proclaiming churches and communities to make him known.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think what's wonderful for you guys, 10 years by God's grace, if you look at the statistics, a lot of churches don't last longer than 4 or 5 years for a number of different reasons. And God in his kindness has sustained you and sustained relationship in the midst of that, and also sustained the collective through that as well. And my encouragement to you is, and encouragement to people listening from Cornerstone Wirral is that let none of us, and it's the same for us, none of us, forget the wonder of the story that we've been brought into. I'm talking redemption story. And people say, oh yeah, I get that. But sometimes even the redemption story we forget. because we get so caught up in our own situation. But then the wonderful story of what God has done across Merseyside, though, it's only been 14 years. We're not talking like a generation, we're talking 14 years. And look what God has done. And there are people now that know Jesus, the Cornerstone Wirral, that when these old men were praying about what do we do with this dying church, God used part of that story and your story and our story, one to it, for you guys to be here, that people now know Jesus in this community and on this peninsula and in different places. Praise the Lord for that. And that's not any one individual robbing glory. No, that what that is let's give glory to God, that as he was orchestrating this, he's working in the hearts of all these different people to bring together the wonder of what he does in the lives of individuals. Let's never forget that story. Ever forget that story. And even if the chapter changes or the chapter turns and the story moves on to something else, praise the Lord. But that chapter only occurs because there were previous chapters that went before. And that's something that so often we spend so much time thinking about what's the next thing, and we lose sight of the good old story and the wonder of what is occurring that actually reminds us again. And I'm sharing this, I'm just waxing lyrical now, I'm going off script, whatever the script was.
Was there a script?
But the reality is this, even from this conversation, it's stirred up, right? Okay, we need to be reminded of that again. For the sake of this. For the sake of the next person in the next community, wherever that may be on the Wirral or in Liverpool or wherever it may be on the world, that the Lord is drawing to himself and he's going to use elements of what he's done in this story and in this story in particular on the Wirral to bring those people into the wonder of his story. And I think that's something we can never forget. Never, ever forget. It's interesting, isn't it? That's what Paul does when he writes. Ephesians, don't forget. Colossians, let me remind you who Jesus is. You know what I mean? Philippians, let me talk about the joy that we have in the gospel. There's a sense of like, I want to remind you of this.
We're quick to forget.
And then let's move on. And I think these times are opportunities for us to be thankful, but also to be reminded. Yeah.
That's key, isn't it? On that book of Esther, isn't it? For such a time as this. Because I was just sharing with Liberty yesterday at Liberty, saying there was a sermon I preached at Cornerstone Liverpool about, okay, we are, a lot of people in Merseyside don't know the gospel. They don't know the Lord Jesus Christ. A lot of people in the world don't know the Lord Jesus Christ. And actually we are God's ambassadors. We are disciple makers. We are the witnesses to the gospel. And so we are, for such a time as this, put it, Cornerstone Wirral is, for such a time as this, people need to hear the gospel. We have a purpose. We have a reason. We have a point. We have a direction, which is to proclaim the gospel to the people around us. Absolutely. And those, like you say, just remembering the stories. Remember, we don't have to make it complicated.
No.
Yeah. We just need to get out and do it.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder to me, to be honest with you. Just, keep coming back to the same old story. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been great just to reminisce a bit and to look back and see what God has done and declare his wondrous works. And like the Lord putting fire in our bellies to keep going. Yeah. We don't settle.
And let me say this, not that I want the final word, I don't, but I want to say this because I think it's good. Josh, you guys, you and Annie and the team who came, 5 of you, feeble amount, not feeble people, but a feeble amount, brokenness. And what God has done and is doing, and those who've been brought into that is wonderful. It's wonderful. And it's just great to see what he's done in and through you and Annie and those people. And I'm thankful to have a seat just to watch and to see. Yeah. And you're doing a great job. Great job. Keep going. Yeah. Love you. Proud of you. Genuinely proud of what you're doing. And we want to honor you and the church and the team, but give God all the glory. So,
amen, yeah.
Love you.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. And we're so thankful for me and Annie personally for how you guys invested in us, give up time, energy, everything for us. And our story couldn't be the story it is without God's goodness and grace and the role that so many played. Some who have gone to be with Jesus. Right. We praise God for them, and others who are continuing to pray for us, even though we might not see them as much. And
we still miss Annie's flute playing.
You sure? We keep trying to. People are trying to make her, convince her to play. She's like,
flute out.
We had some bad music days. God's been so good. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing what God continues to do and through all of us across Merseyside. That's another episode of His Wondrous Works. Thank you for listening in. Continue to like and to share that story so that God gets all the glory. And we look forward to catching you soon. God bless.